Welcome to the So French podcast, the show about the twists and turns, intrigues and insights to all things French. My name is Stefan de Vries.
And my name is Sara Bertilsson. This is the third and last of our summer specials where we talk to writers working and living in France. And in this episode, our guest is Pamela Druckerman.
And Pamela is a writer for the New York Times. She lives in Paris and she published a couple of books, Bringing Up Bébé, that's a US title, but actually I prefer the international title, French Children Don't Throw Food, a bestseller all around the world. She also won an Emmy Award in 2016 for a documentary on the New York Times website, and her latest book, just published, is called There Are No Grown-Ups, a midlife coming-of-age story.
Hello, welcome Pamela, thank you for being with us.
Welcome Pamela.
Thank you, Stefan.
Well, thank you for being here. You've been living in Paris for more than 15 years now?
No, not more than 15.
No?
I would say exactly 15.
Exactly 15.
Yeah, well, that's not exaggerated.
Well, but it feels like more than 15, does it? Or not?
It feels like approximately 15.
Yeah. And you published, actually, your most prolific work was actually written in Paris, right? Because
my only work, actually.
Your only work, so it inspires you a lot.
I only started, well, if we're talking about books, I only started writing books after I moved to Paris, yeah.
Is there a link or?
It's either the country or the partner that
inspired you.
That inspired me. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't really do a controlled experiment. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to live with the same husband in Sweden and see if I'm as prolific.
Yeah. So let's start with the.
Or have a new husband in Paris and see.
Oh yeah, well, or a lover. That's how they do it.
Do you think that would be considered scientifically valid?
I think so. It will be. Yeah, I think it will be. I don't know, morally valid, but at least it will be, do as the locals, when in Rome. You just published a new book, There Are No Grown-Ups, a midlife coming-of-age story. We're all 40, in our 40s here.
Are you in your 40s? Yes. For the record, Sarah does not look like she's in her 40s.
Nor does Pamela.
Well, for the record, I just turned 40. So.
Congratulations.
So it's actually the age where you get where you become an adult, right? Or how would you describe the 40s?
I didn't know really what they were when I entered them. I remember when I turned 40, the place you are now, Sarah, this woman I ran into in the park said 40 doesn't count because you still look like you're in your 30s.
Not always true, though.
But it was kind of ominous, like the real 40s kick in later. Yeah, it's this transitional age that no one around me could really define to my satisfaction. So I set about trying to describe it, this age that I was entering, this new stage in my book. And I found lots of different ways to kind of try to put my finger on it, experientially, scientifically.
Was it a kind of therapy for yourself, or, were you scared entering the 40s?
I was. It felt like I was entering this kind of new phase of life that it had no milestones, if that makes any sense. Earlier, I had gotten married and I'd had children. And even before that, your whole life is milestones. You learn to ride a bike and then you graduate and then you pass through these phases that are very well defined and you have people around you kind of congratulating you. And then when you enter the 40s, you suddenly become the one who's supposed to be congratulating other people. And also there are just no real milestones. You can still have babies, you can still get married, but it just doesn't carry the same weight. It felt in a way that I was entering real life, like the stage that I had been preparing for all these years was happening now. So that was disorienting. It had this kind of now or never smell about it.
Now, one of the things in the book I found interesting was that you described that turning 40 in France is very different from turning 40 in the US, especially as a woman.
Right. What I say in the book is it's like there's a public referendum on your face everywhere you go because...
here or in the US?
Here, just because of the whole Madame phenomena. When I moved to Paris when I was 34... I hope nobody listening to this is good at math because they'll know how old I am. And I was Mademoiselle everywhere I went. And I work in cafes, so really every time someone hands you a coffee, they tell you how old you look. And then sometime around the time I turned 40, I don't know if this has happened to you yet, probably not. It was this ironic madame, but with a little wink. And then it was just full on madame, no questions asked. And so I realized I was not aging in secret. I was aging in public very much here.
Yeah. But don't you have the same thing in English from Miss to Mrs.?
But nobody addresses you by Miss or Mrs.
No?
Or, I mean, in the South a little bit, people say ma'am, but it's not constant and ubiquitous.
So now you're a madame. And do you feel like a madame or do you still feel like a mademoiselle?
Now, if somebody called me a mademoiselle, I would feel that they were mocking me or that they had read my book and they pitied me.
But is it only when it comes to the physical appearance where you see that there's a difference between the US and France, for example? Or is it also a difference, as you see it, between how people consider women in their 40s or after 40s in the countries?
I found lots of differences on lots of levels. I mean, for just in terms of the transition, for me, one question was, well, I look like I'm in my 40s now. I look like a madame, but do I actually feel like one? Because as Stefan said, there's this kind of expectation when you enter your 40s that you're an adult, that you know how to do things, that you're responsible, that you have this ineffable quality of grown-upness that I had always projected onto people who were older than me. I myself was supposed to have it now. And I worried that I didn't, that I wasn't wise, that I wasn't capable, that I didn't have judgment or perception that I imagined a quote-unquote grown-up would have. So the question for me at the outset of my 40s was, when is my inside going to catch up with my outside? Or does that ever happen? Or the title of the book is There Are No Grown-Ups. Do grown-ups not actually exist? Have I just been projecting this idea onto bigger people my whole life? And how pathetic is it that I've only found out in my 40s that I was doing this?
And what's the answer?
I mean, it's a long answer because it's a kind of teased out in the book on lots of levels, but I would say the short version is that I redefined in a way what it is to be a grown-up. I used to think it was like grown-ups were gods in a way, that they were omnipotent and all-powerful. And now I realized it's smaller and it's more discreet, that it's about doing a few things well, not knowing about everything, and that you do actually improve your judgment in the 40s. And this is not just my view of things, but it's sort of like the neuroscience has tested this, that people in their 40s are less neurotic, which means they're less focused on themselves and worried about how they're being perceived, and therefore more able to take in information about other people. So in a sense, you do know more in your 40s because you don't have this static of self. You still think about how other people see you, but it's not quite as paralyzing and blinding. And you suddenly feel almost like a clairvoyant because you can take in, suddenly there's all this data that wasn't available to you before, or that wasn't available to me. So it's a big relief. And I think when that happens, when you start to just have a sense that you know what's happening around you, you no longer kind of leave meetings going, what just happened? Like something, I have the sense that something was zipping around there, but I don't know what it was. So you start taking in that information, and you build confidence in your own perception of things and your own take on what's happening. And I think that is, in a way, what it means to be a grown-up. It's that small, but it's crucial in a way.
Does it also have to do with responsibility? Because I find the title actually quite good news, that there are no grown-ups. I wouldn't like to be a grown-up. But you are a mother as well, 3 kids. They're doing pretty well. You succeeded. Is that also something that gives you the idea that, okay, I'm a grown-up because I was able to raise 3 children in a good way? Or
I mean, have you met my children? I'm not sure.
Of course I have. I like them. I like them very much.
Okay, I wasn't there when you did.
I went with them to a football match, France, the Netherlands.
Oh, okay. They would have been on their best behavior. They'd be very grateful to be there. I think, even though I'm often kind of baffled by my children's, thank God for Google in modern parenting, they look to me to have kind of judgment and to make moral judgments. Certainly, that my children are very close in age, and 2 of them are 5 minutes apart. And it's probably you've had this experience, like they're obsessed with fairness, and I'm meant to be, just by virtue of having given birth to them, this kind of an example, and this ruler of this tiny country called my apartment, who I must mete out punishment and decide, just make everyone feel like they're, it's a democracy, but it's an autocracy. You play this role and you grow into it. Yeah, I think just by virtue of kind of staying on the escalator, of the point you are at on the escalator, you take on some adult qualities because you do go to the parent-teacher meetings. You do you're the one reading the instruction manual on the washing machine and you figure things out. You have no choice. Yeah. You're thrust, the role has been thrust upon me, as it is for all of us.
You've been talking quite a lot also about the difference in how this idea of, am I a grown-up, or I don't feel like a grown-up, that this is a feeling that more women live with. This imposter syndrome is more common with women than with men. I haven't read research on imposter syndrome, but I was shocked when I was researching this book and interviewing lots of extremely accomplished women in their 40s. People with PhDs, people with advanced careers, people who are really doing extremely well. So many of these women confess to me that they feel imposter syndrome, that they still don't feel entirely qualified for the job they're doing, whereas almost none of the men I interviewed said the same thing. So I think, Yeah, it's true. As a journalist, I don't know if you have the same experience, Sarah and Pamela, but when I try to put as many women in my reports as possible, so I always start with women, to contact women, and then when you contact them, even if they're the expert on their field, the first reaction is, I don't know if I'm the right person. I know a colleague who might be better. And
so do you push them to say
push them. Yeah, absolutely. But if you, and you really have to convince them. And I always say, well, no, it's you that I want. But if you ask the same question to a man and who doesn't know half of what the expert knows, the female expert, he will always say, yeah, okay, I will do it immediately. And I try to change that a little bit on my small scale, but it's a real issue that women feel like they're not
trusting their experiences.
Yeah. No, I think we need to meet somewhere in the middle. Men need to be less overconfident.
Absolutely.
Women need to,
yeah. And do you think when getting 40 that they become more confident, or is it just growing and growing?
I think there's often a crisis at the beginning of the 40s because people feel at this age that they should already be the thing they imagine themselves. They had kind of projected for their future. And if they aren't there yet, there's often this moment of kind of panic, and I wouldn't say it's a midlife crisis, but it is a kind of moment of transition and change where they make major changes in their lives because they want to finally, they feel, again, it's this now or never feeling, like they feel, first of all, ridiculous by a lot of people some people have imposter syndrome justifiably. They haven't actually done the thing that they are imposters. Like I know a lot of people who hit 40 and said, I've been saying for 10 years that I was going to write that book. Guess what? I've never actually sat down to start writing the book. Or, people deal with their sexuality. I know people who got, I know a woman who got divorced from her husband and married a woman. She said, actually, I've never been attracted to men. So it's just kind of this moment of reckoning where people say, who am I really? Because it's ridiculous to pretend forever. That's slightly off topic, but I think that happens a lot in the 40s. And by the later 40s, I've followed a lot of those people because some of them are my friends, and I see that they've really they feel much more resolved and stable, and they pass through this difficult period, which is described in a lot of the psychoanalytical literature as well, and they end up feeling like they are finally living not necessarily the life that they had always imagined they should have, or that they were told they should have, or their parents expected, but that suits them finally. So it's a big relief.
So I've been doing a little bit of math after all. So should we expect, there's after 40s, then there will be the 50s. Do you feel
that's excellent math?
do you think, no, but do you think that do you feel the same questions, new questions arising and coming